Hi,
Hi.
Padma.
Hi,
So
Irina.
nice to see you.
Yes.
Um, so I was just introducing you, and I said that you are a designer, Tunisian crochet designer, and a knitting designer, also from Mumbai, India, right?
Yes.
Um, well, I wore this top specially for you because I want to start the
Oh my
interview.
goodness. Oh,
uh,
that's so pretty.
Thank you.
Is that
I
from
want to,
India?
yeah, a friend of mine actually brought it for me from India. And the
Oh,
reason I
that's so
have
nice.
it is because I've been fascinated with India and Indian fabrics and saris and the whole process of dyeing the fabrics for saris and embroidery from, I think I was about 9. So
Wow.
I lived in Siberia, in like very rural Siberia. My parents were building a hydraulic dam there, and there was
Right.
like not much in entertainment, but like, so I was reading some magazine and I saw this article that called Where Women Wear Saris, and it
Yes.
was basically like describing the whole process of dyeing the fabrics and like all
Yes.
the embroidery of the thing. And ever since then, like I have this fascination with everything India
You're
and
right.
everything textile in India. And I wanted to start there. I wanted, like, I read some of your interviews, and you mentioned that you did embroidery before you became a designer.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit like about your upbringing, like your family, were they crafty? How did you learn embroidery? Like your childhood growing up, just like your introduction to crafts, basically.
Right. Can you hear me, Irina?
Yes.
Okay. So it's actually a little bit of a funny kind of story because I think most crafters usually grow up with someone in the family who crafts.
Correct.
And if they're lucky, they have a mom or a grandmom, or sometimes they just pick it up naturally as they're growing up.
Right.
And in my family, there's nobody who does anything with yarn or with needle
Right.
or with embroidery or anything like that. So I think the first time I ever saw a crochet hook was, um, I think, when I was in the 5th grade, and I saw the mom of one of my classmates, and she was
Right.
doing something, and I assumed that probably it was a knitting, but I wasn't very sure.
Right.
And then she showed me something, and she said, "This is a crochet hook," and that was it for years and years and years. Okay, so this must have been 9 or 10, and after that, embroidery when I was in college and before I got married, I saw someone doing a bit of cross stitch embroidery, and I thought, wow, that's so colorful and that's so nice.
Right.
And so I started doing a little bit of cross stitch.
When
And
when
then,
you did the cross stitching and embroidery, was it like Indian motifs, or was it, because like I'm thinking cross stitch sort of like in my mind it's like those, shepherdess and whatever they from the
yes,
European
yes.
countries. Was it more like that, or was it more like Indian designs?
Actually, initially when I did it, those DMC had those old, very old cross stitch motif books,
Right.
and one of my seniors in college lent me a book, and that was it. I saw all these pictures, and I said, I actually did rather big ones. They're still framed now in my house
Right.
of scenery, and then I did a whole series of chair back, and then from then I moved on to satin embroidery.
Mhm.
So that was all kinds of. I used to draw the motifs into it, satin thread, a single thread, and then that continued for a little while after my kids were born. But after that, there was a long period of years and years in which I didn't do anything.
Right.
I just, yeah, I didn't touch needle thread, and of course, I had no idea what crochet or knitting was.
So
And
how did you discover, like I know you mentioned somewhere that you learned from YouTube and books, but like what was that
yeah.
first initial inspiration? Like, let me try it, let me buy a hook, let me try it. Like, what was
Yeah.
your initial push?
So actually, it is a coming together of 2 or 3 factors together, which is that sometimes in life that's how it happens.
Right.
because when I got posted in my job, I got posted to the south of the country
Hmm.
where I am from, and my husband was somewhere else, and the kids were somewhere else, and it was just me, my mother-in-law, and my dog. So, and then my daughter happened to start college in an area which is cold winter,
Right.
basically. So I had a lot of time on my hands at that time after coming back from work, and then I thought, okay, let me see what I can make for her. And at that time, it was a smallish town, and it wasn't. This was around 2012, so
Right.
it wasn't like the way things are now. Even here in India, we have a lot of online stores. We have lots
Mm.
of local lovely yarn, cotton yarn, silk yarn. We have lots of yarns to choose from, lots of lovely hand dyers. So
Right.
that wasn't the state then. So all I got was this bulky acrylic and a few crochet hooks, and I still didn't know how to knit. So I started off with crochet, and I made a hat and a scarf for my daughter.
Right.
All very wonky edges, but it did the job. Yeah.
Does she still have it?
Yeah. No, I threw it away.
Right.
She wore it for a long time,
Right.
but then when we were packing and all that, then I said it was by that time it was looking dirty. She hadn't washed it, and so we gave it away to someone else who wanted it.
Right.
Yeah. So
So like when you started this crochet, was it just regular crochet? It wasn't Tunisian crochet, right?
no, actually, it is just regular crochet. I don't remember. I got I think one of the very few patterns I've ever followed. I can
Right.
probably count, just on my fingers the number of patterns I've followed without changing anything. So this was, like SCBC, something like that, and two colors. So it is
Hmm.
from one of the crochet magazines.
Right.
So the hat and the scarf. But after that, I moved very quickly into Tunisian crochet,
Right.
and
You know, I
the
discovered Tunisian crochet thanks to you. I never heard of
oh
it
my,
before you. So like I found it when I found you on Instagram. That's when I actually discovered it and I
oh
started
my
looking
goodness,
on YouTube and like trying to figure out what it was.
that's
So
so
it's
nice.
interesting. And how do you like when since you know the all three, right? You do knitting and you do crochet and you do Tunisian crochet. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about like difference in fabric. What like how is Tunisian crochet different from knitting, let's say?
Yeah, actually, so you see, I started off as a crocheter, and then I moved into Tunisian crochet. And the difference I found in fabric between crochet and Tunisian crochet, the first thing is that the hook size. The
Hmm.
first thing that a crocheter has to understand is when you move into Tunisian crochet, use it 2 or 3 sizes larger of a larger hook, because the
Okay.
nature of the fabric is such as the forward part and the return part.
So it's much
And
tighter, so you need a larger hook to create like looser
yes,
fabric.
yes, that's right. You need a larger hook to get some amount of drape.
Right,
Or if you want a very stiff fabric, then that's good for things like coasters and stuff like that.
right,
But if you want wearables or shawls or something like that, then you do need much larger hook than you would use for crochet.
right. And
That is
okay,
one.
so like so you started doing it, right? You started learning the craft, and
Yes.
then very shortly you published your design. How did that happen? Like what gave you the bravery to say, you know what, now I can teach the world how to do it like I do?
I don't think it happened all of a sudden. Actually, Irina, I never really looked back, and see what I've done and when I did it. But when you ask me to chat with you now, then I had a look back to see, like, what was the journey
Right.
and how I started. And so the thing with Tunisian crochet was that I was always, I was looking at knitting projects on Ravelry,
Hmm.
and I was always thinking that, no, I want to do that, but I want to do that in Tunisia.
Right.
And of course now I realize that that's, stretching things a little too far. But I was always trying to, get the look of knitting in Tunisia. And I was trying very hard not to get into knitting, because I thought another craft,
Right.
another whole set of tools, another black hole to fall into. But when I fell, then, everything everything went haywire after that.
Actually,
So
I wanted to ask you that, like, I was talking to couple guys that do exclusively crochet, and I was trying to
Right.
invite them. So a friend of mine, David van de Beek, kept, and me, we like recently opened a knitting group on Facebook called Knitters Gonna Knit. And so I was inviting some of the knitters there, and then I stumbled on a couple guys who were like doing exclusively crochet. And I said, well, you're
Yeah.
still fiber artist, you can join and we can teach you how
Yeah.
to knit. And
Yeah.
their response was like, I always wanted to learn how to knit, but I'm just like terrified of trying another craft. And I'm like so busy with what I'm doing now that I don't want to even like try. What's
Right.
your take on that? Like, how do you feel as a artist who does multiple crafts? Like, do you feel like it gives you more flexibility?
Yeah, Irina, I understand what they're saying. What they're saying, because I felt the same way. You know, I nobody actually taught me how to knit, but there happened to be a lady who lived in my apartment block
Mhm.
who did knitting, and she had this very old pair of 3 mm straight,
Right,
aluminum straight, and she said, okay, I don't need these anymore. So if you want to learn to knit, you can take them. So I took them, and I was terrified because stitches just kept slipping off. I couldn't handle such small needles, and so
right.
I just put them aside for a long time. And finally, I managed to get some circular needles, and I did a scarf. This would have been around 2013 maybe or
Hmm.
so. And I knit in a continental, I'm a combination
Continentals.
style,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what it was at
Well,
that time.
I listen, I still don't know what I'm knitting. I was basically like, if you noticed, I posted all my knitting, like the slow motion, the regular knitting, the pearls, and I was like, okay, people like, what do I do? What do you call it, right? Because
Yes,
basically, like my grandmother showed me how to knit and purl like back when I was probably like 7 or 8, and I only
right.
knitted for like that summer, and then I haven't
Yeah.
touched knitting until 4 years ago. So
Wow.
it just was like somehow the hand memory. So I had it like
Yeah.
immediately. It came back to me when I started knitting, but I have no idea what style I'm using. So there was this
Yeah.
whole like discussion and argument about like what my pearl style and what my knit style.
Yeah, actually, so I was knitting continental combination style without knowing what I was doing.
Right.
So when you do this style, you do your pearls, what people call the easy way or the lazy way of doing a pearl, and this causes your stitches to be crossed on the other. When you turn your work around, your knits are crossed.
Right.
So if you want to have uncrossed knit stitches, you got to knit through the back loop.
Right.
So I
Well,
didn't
the
know
the
this.
thing, the style that I'm knitting, right? It's actually in Russia, they call it grandma style. So it's
Wow.
basically
Okay.
you just knit through like whatever, however the stitch is turning, you just
Right.
make it look right. Like, so there is not like a concrete rule to that, basically. So they have like classic continental, and then they have
Right.
grandma continental. So apparently, like in Russia, they call it grandma continental. So
Okay. Yes.
so
Yeah.
you need through the back loop, basically, like
Yes,
you.
but I didn't know. So, you won't believe my first project which I did in knitting. I did it, all my knits were twisted. And I was struggling and struggling. And it was a long scarf in that bulky yarn. And I
Right,
struggled and struggled, and somehow I finished it. And then I put it aside for 2 years, and I think it is going
right,
to. And I don't know how other people do it so easily,
right,
but I can't. So what was a game changer for me was
right.
in 2015 or so, I saw a set of the Nitro wooden needles, the
Hmm.
interchangeable set.
Right,
So I said, okay, let me try this. So I got the wooden needles, and they were fabulous. I think they're fabulous. You have wooden or bamboo needles for beginner knitters
right,
because the stitches stay on, they don't slip off, and you actually have the time to see what to do.
right.
And that was really a turning point for me. That was a
So,
turning point.
so like I also read that you submit the your designs to the different magazines.
That's right.
How did you learn about it, and like was it a difficult process? Is it like very complicated?
Well, mostly, it is from Gravity because you have on the designers forum, yeah, you have magazines which post calls for
The call for
submission
design.
calls. Yeah, that was one. So uh, there is a learning curve over there. It's not you have to go through the process of getting number of rejections
Right.
before and you have to be mentally prepared to accept that. Because
Right.
now if I submit something and it gets rejected, I would think, yeah, it's okay. It didn't fit the theme, uh, it wasn't suitable for this issue,
You
or
don't take it
something like
personally
that.
anymore.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't take it. But when you're a beginner, then your first rejection is a
Right.
little
You're thinking it's
difficult.
something is wrong with you. You don't think it just
Yes,
like didn't.
or you're not good enough, something like that.
Right.
But that being said, my first actually, I put a few free patterns up of my own
Mm-hmm.
on Ravelry, and then my first third-party publication was with Notion.
Right.
The editor Jody, she was very helpful because I was the first time at publishing. So that happened. I think I have it here. This was my first one.
That's
So
beautiful.
this is mosaic, and it's bulky yarn. So it's a cowl.
Right.
So it's called Pretty Pavement, and this is a free pattern. So Notion has a lot of free patterns still on. So you
Mm-hmm.
can see that they're all different mosaic patterns.
Right.
So it's very colorful, and uh,
It's beautiful.
yeah. So this is my first one in bulky.
Right.
And
And
after that, I've had a number of patterns with Notion, and many of them are still free. So that
right.
makes me happy as well, because a lot of people, when you feel happy when somebody uses your pattern and then they make something and then they wear it and then it becomes part of their life as well. So
Right.
that's
And
something very
like
nice.
out of all the patterns that you published, it's equally like divided between the knitting and crochet and Tunisian crochet, or you're doing mostly Tunisian crochet?
I would say maybe equally between knit and Tunisian,
Right.
but very little on crochet. Just I think crochet. I think this is the one I have in crochet. This is a child pullover,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a drop sleeve pullover with color work. So this was published, I think, in a magazine, and now it's available on Ravelry. So even with this one, it wasn't initially intended to be a crochet sweater. So I was thinking, I'm going to do a Tunisian crochet style sweater. But
Right.
then the editor of the magazine said, no, I'm not looking for Tunisian. I, I want a crochet style sweater. So
Right.
then I picked up my hook, and even here I was looking for, something color work, something like similar to the net, yoke sweaters,
Right.
something
The
like that.
yoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that.
I
So
also wanted to ask you, like you mentioned the yarn dyers, the local yarn dyers, and I
yes,
know that the whole like dyeing process in India goes back to like Victorian times. Basically, it was already very popular in Europe. It was very praised, like the Kashmir shawls and all the
yes,
embroidery and the silks and different like very colorful fabrics. And I saw this video of people basically recycling the flowers from some local temple that's being
right,
offered as offerings and
yes.
hand dyeing with that. Do you have any like is hand dyeing and like all the yarn dyeing? It's a big industry where you are,
Uh, we have India's got a very huge textile heritage. It's
right?
enormous. You've already mentioned that, and especially with handloom. So our silk and our cotton, there's a tremendous amount of history there. So in fact, if you go to each different state of India, you may generalize that okay, handloom, cottons, and silks are famous in India. But if you go to each different state, you will find that the techniques they use are completely different. They're
Right,
completely different from a neighboring state. There are
right,
some commonalities, of course, but a lot of techniques are different. The motifs they use are different. The dyes they use are different. So, I always say that India is like it's a country of such diversity.
right,
It's like many tiny little countries, all rolled up into one, one glorious complex.
Right.
So,
And so like you said you're using a lot of cotton and a lot of silk. Like, do you use wool as well? Is there like a market for wool, or is it just too hot for that?
it depends on which part of the country you're in. Like for most of the country, we're in the tropics, so it's a tropical country,
Right.
and especially in the south, our summers are warm and they're humid.
Right.
And if you go, there are some places in the south where you do get cooler winters and where you can, you need layers.
Right.
And if you go to the north,
Right.
the
There's
summers
like
are very
snow
hot.
and
Yeah, the summers are hot, the winters are very cold. And of course, the northern areas, you've got snow as well. So I think, there's a whole subset of people there in the north who knit on a daily basis.
right.
But then these people aren't on Ravelry. But if you look up, if you're on YouTube and if you see our national language Hindi, if you look up Hindi YouTube videos on knitting, there are thousands, and
Right.
some of those YouTubers have got like hundreds of thousands of followers. So
Right.
obviously there are people knitting over there. It's
Right.
just that they on a daily basis, just that they aren't in the international eye so much.
Right. And actually,
Yeah.
that's another thing I wanted to ask you. So lately, I mean, when I got into knitting, it was like about 4 years ago, right? It's especially in America, it's very social kind of thing. There's all
Right.
these huge festivals. You have Rhinebeck, you have Vogue Live, in New York. I mean, there's like huge festivals. Like Rhinebeck,
Yeah.
there's like 70,000 people that visited
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
And then there's all the Facebook groups, there's Zoom meetings over COVID and stuff, Is that the same? Like, do you feel the same in India, or do you feel like you are a single person and then there's like another single person there and single person there? Like, is there social aspect to craft like
To
where from
craft,
your experience?
yeah, to craft definitely, because you have lots and lots of crafters coming together,
Right,
and you have cooperatives of craft to produce their own line of craft,
right,
definitely. But specifically for yarn, I mean for hand knitting and hand crocheting, we do have our friends. We do have friends get together from time to time, and a lot of us have got our WhatsApp groups and Instagram friends, and
right,
we do keep in touch. Yes, but the last 2 years, I mean, the last year and
right,
year as well has been pretty
right.
quiet on that front. But
Do you find like this now that India is like in the midst of COVID and it's like one of the most affected places in the world right now? Do you find that it's like difficult for you to balance like the work and the crocheting and publishing? Is it like more difficult, or you have more time because everything is in lockdown and you can
well,
come to that?
the last 2 years has been really difficult for India. Actually, the whole thing started in March with the lockdown, and
Right,
then cases started rising. Actually, I don't usually talk about this, but in my day job, I'm a surgeon.
right,
So I have a full-time job in a hospital and teaching as well. So we were doing COVID duties and very stressful. And then, you're quarantined from the family for a
right,
while.
right,
And then things started improving towards the end of last year. And we thought, we were coming out of it. And December, January, February, people started
started
feeling a little
again.
normal. And then March, the whole thing blew up again.
Right,
So this time it's been bad because we had a lot of mortality. Younger people have been dying. And the lockdown is just easing now here in Mumbai. So we are
right.
hoping that things will get better, and we keep our fingers crossed we don't get a third wave over here.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's hope it gets better.
And do you find that like your craft, like the crocheting or knitting, do you find that this is like your space of meditation? Like, because you have such a busy life, you have kids, you have, family and the full-time work, and, and obviously you're busier than a lot of people just because you're in the healthcare. Do you find that like when you come home, do you knit every day or do you crochet every day? Like, is that your like space of calm and meditation in the midst of the storm?
Oh, absolutely, Ravina. I would have to say, I think for most of us it is.
Right.
It's probably yarn which has kept most of us sane, I think, through everything which is, going on around us. And for me, usually when I come home, I always think that, my crafting comes in bits of 15 minutes, like 15 minutes here, and then I'm off to do something, and then I'm back, and then half an hour here, and then, but every morning I try and get about 10 to 15 minutes in just before I leave for work.
Right.
And I told my husband, you won't talk to me during this time. No talking.
The me
This is
time.
silent. Yeah, this is me time and this is silent time. And it's just that the meditative quality of whatever you're doing, it sort of calms your brain down, your brain waves down for the rest of the day.
Right.
And I think that's something which I need to. And the days I don't do that, I feel out of sorts.
You feel the
But
difference.
yeah.
Do you usually work on like one particular project, or do you have like multiple projects that you do 10 minutes of this and 15 minutes of that? Like what's your usual routine?
I don't generally have multiple projects going
Right.
because actually I think I'm not a very super fast designer when it comes to designing or a particular uh, inspiration or a particular idea in mind.
Right.
So I don't think that I have to finish this particular design in this particular time because unless it turns out the way that I've seen in my head, I don't mind spending a lot of time on it.
Right.
So I usually stick to one project at a time, unless there's something mindless, going
Right.
on which you can do on the side. But it's usually just one at a time.
And do you usually like, let's say you work on Tunisian crochet, and then you're done with that project. Do you like, okay, I'm done with crochet, let me move to knitting now? Is that how it
Absolutely,
works? Yeah.
absolutely. That happens. You're bang on. And it happens all the time. So when
Yeah.
I've done, I've been knitting for a while, and then by the time that I'm binding off and I'm blocking, and then I feel that now it's time to take my hook.
Right. Right.
You get this craving for your Tunisian hook, and then I'm back to Tunisian. And I usually switch like that, and it helps a lot also because you use different movements for each.
Right. So there
So
is no
you don't have
injury
repetition.
basically.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So it helps
Um,
that way.
do you like, if you're working on one project, are you mentally already in another project, or like when does design actually happen in your head? Like, is it before the process and then you're like, oh, I have to finish this one and start the new one because I have this inspiration? Or is it like you take a break in between and something comes?
Um, that's an interesting question, because for every project, my design process is different. Like sometimes it's an inspiration, something I've seen, and I want to express that in a pattern in yarn.
Right.
And sometimes it's the yarn itself. I'm trying to knit with it or make something out of it, and maybe it's variegated. It doesn't flow properly, and then it makes me change my stitch pattern. And sometimes it's with a complete. I want to try a different shape, a different construction.
Right.
So I mean, it was nice that because of having this talk, made me look back as well on what I've been doing, and I realized that every time I do a new design, there's always something new.
Right.
There's
And
always
actually,
something
it's
new.
funny because like when I was interviewing Julie Needs in Paris, and I told her the same thing. I was like, every time I'm testing one of her patterns, I'm learning something completely new. Like she always sneaks one new element, like there's gonna be like brioche on top of the sweater, or there's gonna be some like new stitch that I've never heard of. It's like
Yes,
it's actually keeps it like very interesting, you know.
yes.
So talk a little bit about your testers. How do you find testers? Like, do you have the same testers? Do you just announce test call and whoever wants to do it? Like, how do you work with testers?
Mm, actually, I don't have, I'm not very good at all the framework and all the infrastructure which goes behind design. So as of now, the testers which I've had, see, many times when you're submitting to a magazine, so you knit a sample.
Right.
So they send you yarn and you knit the sample. Or sometimes, like because we are out of the US or UK, we have a sample knitter in the US who you send the pattern to, and they will knit your pattern.
Right. Right.
So in which case, that's the kind of testing, and there's a tech editor involved. So we don't really need so many testers. But when I'm self-publishing, I've usually published on Ravelry.
Right.
Because I would like to, but I don't have the time for a website, you know, or even my own group on Ravelry.
Right.
Because if I do those things, I would like to spend some time on that, and I don't have it at the moment. So I usually publish on Ravelry, or sometimes I announce on Instagram that I want testers for a particular design. But that's when I'm self-publishing.
Right. Tell me, like, when somebody needs your design, is that like an ultimate high? Like you see your design and somebody else's interpretation?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It is, because you know I've seen other I've heard other designers say that as well. That because each tester brings a little bit of themselves into into that pattern, and it turns out into, you know, in ways that you won't have imagined yourself.
Right.
And I have had, you know, a couple of unforgettable moments with some particular designs, because I'll show you this one. This is one of my these are your colors, by the way.
Right, the Smurfette.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, Smurfette colors. So you can see this is one of my very early Tunisian designs.
Right.
So this is lace, and it's DK weight. So it's very fairly long shawl called Calm Bay. Yeah. And this is a free pattern in Notion, and it's still free on Ravelry. So I've had a knitter who turned to Tunisian crochet seeing this, and I think she's my care, and she made one of these for herself, and then a friend was getting married, so she made another one for her friend, and she put some beads on it. And then when her friend got married, the shawl was actually used in the wedding ceremony.
Oh, that's
and
so nice.
You know, put around the bride and the groom. And she sent me a photo of that, and I felt, you know, I'm sitting far away across the world, but through the magic of yarn and something from my head to someone else's hands, I've become a tiny bit of someone else's happiness and somebody else's life. So that was quite unforgettable.
No, that's so nice. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. I'm so glad we got to chat. It was like so nice to meet you, and you know, because we've been friends on Instagram, but we never actually talked. So it was very nice to hear your voice and see your face.
Yes, it's very nice. Thanks so much, Arina.
And I'm gonna put the link to your account, so if people wanna look at your patterns, they can like check the Ravelry, and you know, if they wanna follow you, they'll know how.
Okay.
Well, thank you so very much. It was very nice to meet you.